Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. We have a pretty big Nioh 3 update to go over because the Hell Rising launch is right around the corner, and this latest patch is doing a whole lot more than simply unlocking the DLC. First, Hell Rising itself is now part of the game, but there is an important requirement before you can access it. You need to complete the base game first, so this is not something you can jump into halfway through your first run. Once you have cleared the base experience, you can move into the new story and the KN era content. The expansion is also adding the Hoko and Shield, along with the ninja version of the Hoko and Shield. These become available from the 1572 CE Warring States period onward, so they are not locked strictly to the new story area. That is a pretty important detail because it means the new weapon types can become part of your broader progression rather than being something you only touch while playing the DLC. The basic idea behind the weapon is pretty interesting because it combines an offensive short spear still with an actual defensive shield. That gives it a very different feel from most of the existing weapon choices. On top of that, there are separate samurai and ninja versions, so you are not just getting one new moveset and calling it a day. There is a new direction for both styles. And considering how much Nioh 3 builds around switching between samurai and ninja combat, this could end up being one of the more useful additions for people who enjoy experimenting with different setups. Then we get to the 100 Demon Realms picture scrolls, and this is probably one of the biggest additions in terms of long-term replay value. You unlock this system after completing a certain myth in Hell Rising. Once it becomes available, enemies will occasionally drop picture scrolls. They are rare drops, so you will not be swimming in them immediately. Once you have one, you can challenge the mission attached to that particular scroll. Completing the mission allows you to equip the scroll and gain its benefits, and that means the system becomes part reward, part challenge, and part build customization. You can continue replaying these missions and work toward improving the effects associated with the scroll. There is also a multiplayer angle here. Other players can give you these scrolls during multiplayer sessions, and the missions can be tackled together through expeditions. That is a nice touch because it gives the system an extra reason to interact with other players instead of making it purely something you farm alone. The other major addition is the Enlightened Ones journey difficulty. This is unlocked after completing Shogun's journey, so this is firmly aimed at players who have already pushed through the existing endgame. And this is where the update starts getting much more serious. In this new difficulty, you can obtain stronger equipment, additional soul cores, and more picture scrolls. The level cap goes up, the plus value cap through soul matching goes up, and divine rarity gear can roll with grace effects that are exclusive to this playthrough. Some equipment can also receive powerful special effects at random, which gives another reason to keep chasing drops even if you already have a fully developed build. The enemies are stronger too, and their resistances are increased. Some enemies can also receive a curse buff, which makes them even more dangerous. The interesting part is that curse is not just a permanent stat boost that you have to suffer through. You can temporarily disable it by performing a burst break, destroying weak points, or landing a grapple. That means the game is giving you specific combat goals in exchange for making the enemy more vulnerable. You cannot simply mash through everything. You have to pay attention to the mechanics if you want the best results. Defeating enemies with curse also guarantees a divine rarity item, and it increases the chance that the player gets powerful special effects, so there's a real risk and reward structure here. The tougher enemies are more dangerous, but they also become some of the best targets if you're trying to optimize your gear. Beyond that, Hell Rising adds new yokai, new soul cores, new summoning seals, new onmyo magic, new guardian spirits, new weapons, armor, accessories, martial arts, ninjutsu, skills, gestures, transformations, trophies, titles, and additional play records. So this is not just a story expansion with a few new missions attached. It is expanding the entire progression loop. Now let's get into the balance changes, starting with Ki, because this update makes some meaningful changes there. The strength stat now increases Kai damage more heavily. Human enemy Kai recovery has also been adjusted, while several human bosses have had their Ki consumption reduced when attacking. Guardian Spirit skills can deplete more maximum Kai, and summoning seals also get increased maximum Kai depletion. That's a pretty interesting combination because it improves the value of Ki-focused builds while also making certain Guardian Spirit and summoning seal options more relevant for breaking enemies down. It should make pressure-based builds feel stronger, especially against enemies that rely on guarding and recovery. There are also significant changes to some set bonuses. Unmatched Warrior gets a fairly major redesign. The life drain bonus from ranged weapon hits is removed. The reduced movement effect from ranged hits now activates with 2 pieces instead of 3. The aiming movement speed bonus moves down to 3 pieces instead of 4. The increased damage taken effect from ranged hits moves down to 4 pieces instead of 5, and the 5th piece now gives a confusion status ailment duration bonus. The old extended negative effects effect also loses confusion as one of its targets. That is a lot of movement in one set, and it looks like the goal is to make the bonuses come online faster while shifting some of the emphasis away from the old ranged setup. General of Ruin is also getting stronger in several areas. Guard key consumption becomes more effective, Frost Moon damage goes up, and faster key recovery after Deflect gets both a stronger effect and a longer duration. The key damage bonus from Deflect is getting an even bigger mechanical adjustment. Instead of dealing a fixed percentage of the enemy's maximum key, it now calculates damage from the normal Kai damage system, using the relevant special effects and key damage dealt values. More importantly, it can now damage the maximum key of yokai enemies as well. That could make Deflect focus builds much more useful in a wider range of fights. Grace of Ben Zayden also gets a bug fix where the stack count duration effect was not activating correctly for status enhancements other than versatility. So one of those long-standing build interactions should now behave the way it was intended. Weapon changes are spread across basically the entire roster. For the Samurai Sword, II Quick Draw gets a damage increase, Tempest is easier to land, and a problem where Tempest was not dealing damage has been fixed. There are also several input fixes involving combination, martial arts, strong attacks, dodging, and quick attack follow-ups. Dual swords get stronger. Sign of the Cross and Sign of the Cross pierce damage. The spear gets shorter recovery after guarding, plus increased damage on Tornado and Fatal Thrust. The axe also gets shorter recovery after guarding, along with fixes involving Frost Moon and martial art input behavior after strong attacks. The Odachi is getting a pretty noticeable set of damage buffs. Devastating Rush, Imperative Strike, Moonlit Snow Redux, and Moonlit Snow Charge all deal more damage. Cuckoo's Call also costs less maximum key when used as a counter. The Switchglaive gets increased damage on Thin Air, and there is a fix for Mystic Arts of where Wildfire Flux or Tempest Flux could interact with style shift or equipment changes and unintentionally raise an effect level. Cestus's also get stronger. Unbroken now provides a larger melee damage boost, and several problems involving the wrong martial art triggering during combination inputs have been corrected. On the ninja side, the Ninja Sword gets a damage increase on Cloudrunner Blade, while dual ninja swords get increased Cloud Splitter damage. The Split Staff gets a couple of quality fixes. Mist can now properly be performed after a quick attack while airborne close to the ground, and there's a correction involving Style Shift and Powerful Shift that could produce unintended attacks. Kusarigama receives quite a few combat buffs. Reaper gets more damage. Tangle Strike and Tangle Strike Lightning get more damage and more spirit damage. Blade Spin also gets a damage increase. Martial arts are easier to perform after Reed Cutter, and Masterful Guard now deals key damage as intended. There are additional fixes involving Crimson, Flurry 2, and Strong Attack input behavior. The hatchets receive a smaller fix, involving the weapon sheathing animation when the blades are covered in blood. Talons are probably one of the biggest winners in this part of the patch. Quick attacks and strong attacks both deal more damage. Chaotic Cleave is faster and stronger. Whirling Tiger is faster and stronger. Whirling Tiger Water gets the same kind of treatment. Dragonfly Reversal gets increased damage and spirit damage, and Dragonfly Reversal Pierce does too. There is also a general fix for ninja-style combination inputs, where pressing certain martial art inputs very quickly after Mist could trigger a strong attack instead. The common skill changes are worth mentioning because some of them affect build behavior rather than individual weapons. Onmyo Magic is faster while Awakening is active. There are fixes for strange weapon models when volitional Onmyo Magic and elemental weapon effects interact. Powerful Shift no longer incorrectly grants ninjutsu acceleration. Amplification now properly extends negative effect durations from Onmyo Magic item effects, and consumables like Fire Amulets and Paralytic Blade Tinctures no longer cause unintended duration extensions on elemental weapon effects. Samurai skills also get fixes related to advantageous deflect and counter-offensive deflect, particularly around arts gauge gain and the way increased damage duration is applied. The ninja skill fixes focus heavily on Shadowclad and Shared Blessing. Shadow Art ninjutsu interactions no longer incorrectly carry elemental attributes into later casts. Shared Blessing now applies status enhancements more reliably and correctly uses the enemy's most recent status enhancement. Physical Art Strike and Shadowclad can also properly activate in situations involving style shift during ninjutsu. Then we have a big group of quality of life improvements, and some of these are exactly the sort of changes that become more valuable the longer you play. You can now send multiple items to the storehouse at the same time from the items menu at shrines. There is also a new storehouse tutorial. Camera distance gets a much larger adjustment range, moving from 0 through 10 to -10 through 10, which gives you considerably more control over the camera. The maximum number of effect icons can now be adjusted between 8 and 16, and the size of those icons changes based on your setting. There is also a new option to open the map during battle. Obtained item notifications have been split into equipment and other items, which should make inventory management a lot cleaner for players who do not want every single pickup filling the screen. Menus such as soul matching and soul core enhancement can now loop from the lowest value to the highest value and back again. You can also filter for a plus value of 0, preserve your filter results when switching tabs, and sell elixirs. The game is also getting better at handling equipment drops from treasure chests that have already been opened on other difficulties, making it easier for higher rarity gear and stronger plus values to appear. The elemental damage cap is being raised massively, from 65,535 to 999,999. That is a huge increase, and it gives players a lot more room for specialized elemental builds in the endgame. Extended negative effects and negative effects duration now recognize confusion as a valid status effect target. Stealth prestige from titles will no longer affect enemies during combat. Guardian Spirit skill stats gain more from destroyed crucible spikes, and those stats have a stronger effect on Guardian Spirit skill damage. Kusanagi also gets an adjustment, so its damage bonus tied to the Amrita gauge reaches the highest rank even when the player is low level. Boiling counter for Narukama Tanuki gets a really useful improvement too. Repelling an enemy attack no longer consumes ki, and repelling a burst attack will immediately trigger a burst break afterward. Enemies in Shogun's Journey are also having their attack increase reduced, which should slightly ease the difficulty curve without taking away the challenge of that playthrough. There are more changes around multiplayer balance as well. The plus value synchronization cap is being lowered, so guests cannot enter a host's world with gear that is dramatically stronger and destroy enemies before the host has a chance to engage. The PlayStation 5 version also receives a new feature allowing save data to be deleted directly. On Steam, benevolent graves now provide increased rewards when placed in areas that have very few benevolent graves. There are also fixes for codec errors during tutorial videos, a problem involving some antivirus programs deleting the excess DLL, and several frame rate specific bugs. One of those PC fixes is especially interesting for players using frame generation overrides. The update warns that 3 times or 4 times frame generation can produce rendering issues on 60 Hz displays, with a recommendation to use a 120 Hz display or reduce the override to 2 times if problems appear. There are also fixes for several 30 frames per second issues involving fluid form, Kusanagi's Heaven's Fire, and mission progression after certain bosses are defeated with skip cutscenes enabled. And then there is the giant pile of smaller fixes that are easy to overlook but can make the game feel more reliable. Control type F no longer triggers the wrong action when using Guardian Spirit skills while guarding. Ho-Oh now properly summons both parts of its intended Guardian Spirit skill. Kodama summoning seals now correctly scale with the level of the Kodama Soul Core. Shadow Stitch gets several fixes involving enemy attacks, guarding, burst break interactions, and situations where enemies could become difficult to hit afterward. There are corrections for enemy resistances, Yokai Ki recovery, Mikoshi Nudo's grab hit detection, Itsumade attack timing, Mizuki attack directions, and the wind resistance problem affecting Jailer Oni. Several mission progression issues have also been addressed, including problems after defeating Ryomen Sukuna, Tokugawa Yoshinobu, and other major encounters. There are fixes for incorrect mission levels, incorrect item levels under level sync, luck not affecting certain enemy drops, Guardian Spirit skill status effects failing to apply, and multiple issues involving special effects and status duration calculations. That last group is especially important for high-end builds because Nioh 3 has a ridiculous number of interacting systems. When you combine style shift, martial arts, ninjutsu, Amyo magic, guardian spirit skills, status effects, set bonuses, soul cores, and equipment effects, one broken interaction can affect an entire build. So even when a fix sounds minor, it can have a pretty big impact on players who are building around that system. There are also fixes for title tracking, trophies, equipment reproduction, exploration levels, multiplayer photo mode, boss behavior when a guest dies, item replenishment during expeditions, mission completion problems in multiplayer, and a variety of menu and interface issues. Looking at the update as a whole, the big story here is that Hell Rising is not being treated like a simple content drop. The expansion is adding a new story and an entirely new layer of progression on top of the existing game. The 100 Demon Realms picture scroll system gives players something to chase repeatedly, while Enlightened Ones' Journey gives geared players a much harder environment where those new rewards actually matter. The combat balance is also moving in an interesting direction. A lot of martial arts are getting damage increases, key-based systems are getting stronger, and several awkward weapon interactions are being corrected. That should make a lot of existing builds feel better without forcing everyone into one specific setup. And because there are new Guardian Spirits, new Soul Cores, new Summoning Seals, new Ninjutsu, new Onmyo Magic, new Graces, new equipment, and a higher progression ceiling, there is a pretty good chance that builds people thought were finished are going to have another round of experimentation ahead of them. The really interesting part for me is the new difficulty combined with the picture scroll system. Those two additions feed directly into each other. You have stronger enemies creating better rewards. You have new effects that can improve your build. You have scroll missions that can be replayed and customized. And you have another difficulty layer that gives all that gear a place to matter. So once Hell Rising goes live, Nioh 3 is not just getting another story chapter. The whole endgame is being pushed forward. And considering how detailed the combat system already is, these changes could end up having a much bigger effect on how people build, farm, and play than the story content alone. For anyone who has already finished Shogun's journey and started feeling like the build grind was reaching its limit, this update is basically opening the door again. There are stronger enemies, stronger gear, additional systems to master, and a huge list of combat adjustments that should shake up plenty of existing setups. The amount of work packed into this update is pretty wild when you look at the full list, that especially because it covers everything from major DLC systems all the way down to individual martial arts inputs and menu behavior. And with Hell Rising launching, we are very close to seeing how all of these changes actually feel in regular gameplay. That is the full rundown of the Hell Rising update and the major patch changes. Nioh 3 is about to get a much deeper endgame, a new weapon style, a new story chapter, and a whole lot more room for builds to grow.